India has got a huge potential in ammunition. India has got a huge potential in missile export. India has got a huge potential in export of small arms and RT systems. These type of technologies which were being imported have to be made within the country. Are we in a position today to sell major defense products?
Out of the 9 different reforms that Rajnath Singh suggested, the most important one is acquisition procedure. There was a reform, in fact, last year that said we need to increase our R&D budget to at least 25% to be able to reach where we want to reach in self-reliance.
So, for testing of air assets or for the engines, he needs about 50,000 crores. Where do you get this money from and where do you set up this infrastructure within the country? They are at times denied access to critical technologies. Which are those technologies which are not available with the world, but we as a nation are a pioneers in that technology and thinking in that line?
None.
So if it is none, then the question is, why is it none?
In this episode, we have a very special guest with us, an army veteran, General R.S. Reen, who recently retired as the DG, Director General Quality Assurance. General Reen deeply understands the defense ecosystem, and today's conversation is all about the year of reforms, suggested by the Raksha Mantri, Rajnath Singh. We talk about different reforms that are suggested, from jointness and integration to technological advancement to even how we can improve our procurement and acquisition process. This conversation includes a lot of suggestive policies for the ministry and the private sector. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought-provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. General Reen, welcome again on Dive for Publishers. So always a pleasure to have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
So today we're going to be discussing an important subject. On the eve of the New Year's, Rajnath Singh, our Defence Minister, announced that this year is going to be the year of reforms. And he portrayed with us 9 different points that need to be focused on. So to begin with, what is your take on that? How do you assess this announcement?
Firstly, it's a very significant announcement which has come on 1st of January. Last year, the focus was purely on indigenization. Now, I think the MOD is thinking on holistic reforms, which could be operational reforms, which could be procedural reforms, which could be reforms in the process of how we acquire technology, amendments to the existing policies. Now, in this, few things are very critical and very important. One is the integration or the process of theaterization which is going on, which is a subject in itself, though I will be not covering that in great detail because there are much better experts who can give an insight into it. But what I will cover is, which I know better, is the acquisition process. Very recently, after the Defence Minister and the RM spoke about the reforms, there was a seminar in which the Defence Secretary also spoke. And his take was on the DAP, the existing DAP 2020, which was earlier referred as DPP. This is one document which becomes as a guiding document how the procurement happens and how a new project which is under capital acquisition becomes a reality. His point was that there is a delay in RFP. The request of a proposal itself gets delayed. Now, having been part of that whole process, as QA being a stakeholder, I could also visualize that yes, at different level, in different procedures, there are delays. I will touch the fundamental part. Why and how did DPP or now DAP came into existence? We all remember the infamous Talca case, in which the afterthought was that we should have a procedure. So DPP came into existence. But the book sometimes becomes a Bible. If you go to any office, you will find more stickers, more paste on these in this book, because everybody refers to a particular page. It's just a guide. It should not be taken so moto as an authority to decide what I need. Now, Who needs an equipment? It's the line directorate, or in Navy what you call as a professional directorate. They refer the case to the CD directorate, who collects all the information, and then it is processed with the acquisition wing. Now you have got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of procurement. Biggest reform, if it has to happen, can we eliminate some of these layers of procurement? Because you have a technical manager, you have an acquisition manager, both sitting under DG acquisition and both getting their inputs from the respective services. Say CD in the case of Army. And similarly, you would have a similar setup in Navy and the Air Force. If they have come to a conclusion that this is a requirement, why you have got another 2 elements or 2 more layers who will come in? It is their job, it is their mandate to do it. Obviously, the file is going to become much more fatter and it will have that much of delays. This procedure has to be refined. Third is, everybody wants to make a file that it meets or it goes through the process of finance. Though we all talk that we have got integrated finance. Now, integrated finance by the main ministry is there to be a facilitator. Now, he may have his objection, right or wrong, but to give a reply back, the process of the file becomes so long and so rigid at times that it itself is a time-consuming process. So the next reform in it is, other than reducing the layers of acquisition, have a document inserted in DAP. What are the guidelines there for the finance to deal with both capital and revenue procurement? Beyond that, it should not be their mandate, and they should not have an questions or point raised on file just because it came to your wisdom. Third most important is, who is the most affected person in this whole process of procurement?
The user?
Of course, user. And who represents the user? The respective vice chiefs who have got the financial powers to deal with it. Trust 2 people who are responsible and have the authority. It is the DefSec and the respective vice chiefs who are people of credibility, who are the people who have got highest level of integrity. Trust them in their decision making and let them sail through those process of acquiring those technologies and buying those equipments, and see to it that most of the equipment what we get, are we first able to get that technology within the country, or if not, how are we sourcing it and having a production within the country. R&D is a separate issue, I'll touch it separately. Another critical aspect in it is, there are long delays which take place for induction of this equipment, which involves a long period of user trials,
Quality
which
assurance.
involves a long period of quality trials, the sustenance trials, and other associated trials. Can they be reduced? Maybe some of them cannot be reduced. But yes, some of them can be combined together. For that, we need to have the infrastructure in place. In one of the recent interviews, the DRDO chief said, for testing of air assets or for the engines, he needs about 50,000 crores. The testing infrastructure. Where do you get this money from? And where do you set up this infrastructure within the country? So there are studies which have happened, which is also a continuous process, in which the thought process should go on these as part of the reforms, that these facilities are available in India and we don't have to go abroad for doing it.
So what I've understood is that out of the 9 different reforms that Rajnath Singh suggested, the most important one is acquisition procedure. And to understand that better, sir, let's go a little back. You said earlier it was called DPP, and then in 2020 changed to DAP. Before we talk about 2025, let's talk about what were the changes from DPP to DAP, sir.
So every time the changes come in is what is the requirement of the suppliers. As an outreach to the industry to make it much simpler, the chapters have been introduced at various levels, both for the naval acquisition or for the defense, the army acquisition, to make these procedures simpler and make it much more leaner, and we reduce the time frame of induction. Often said and done, it still does not happen. Our industry, who has been claiming that they will be able to produce, barring some technologies, they also have their dependency on their collaborators, which could be of foreign origin. They are at times denied access to critical technologies, in that they also do not get the required certifications. The important change which should come in this DAP is insertion of standards to which the compliance in manufacturing becomes important, that these are the parameters for which an equipment, whether it is a small arm system or it is a gun or it is a aircraft, it will qualify for these parameters.
Are you saying these standards aren't there at the moment?
Standards are there. The standards development is an ongoing process. Within my own QA organization, we developed more than 150 standards for different type of equipment as far as the army is concerned. Similar approach would have been in the air systems and the naval systems. So these has to be taken as a datum for whatever is being supplied to this country or to the armed forces. Whether they do the testing in private sector, whether they do the testing under their own aegis, or they do the testing certification from other country, doesn't matter. But the proof of those tests should be submitted to whomsoever they consider it as part of the DAP. This is one major reform which will become as part of the acquisition reforms.
Other than creating a standard requirement for how the
RFP is a very broad document. I want these parameters. Now these parameters, everybody will say, I have made it, sir. You please accept it. Compliance to what? This is a very unique country where your temperature requirements vary from plus 50, 55 degree. This year even Delhi was 50 degree. And it goes to minus 40 degrees. Currently Srinagar is at about minus 5 degrees, 10 degrees. So I was experiencing that every car key is getting stalled in J&K because it has got a battery in it. So imagine what will happen to the defense equipment when it is deployed beyond a certain altitude.
True.
And same is for those type of equipment which are deployed in high temperature zone, deployed which is got with high humidity. So these procedures exist within the country. So these procedures have to be adopted in whatever language it is to be there for the industry to understand that before you come and start claiming that you are able to supply this equipment, please also come with an assurance that your equipment has got compliance to these standards. You may agree or disagree, but every country which is a leading manufacturer, why do they all refer to the NATO standards and they start becoming the datum for the world? They have the design capabilities. Since they had the design capabilities, so they have developed the standards. We were lacking in design capabilities. So we could not develop standards. Therefore, we have adopted those standards. At least let me reach that stage before I have got something of my own, which is my own creation for which I have developed my own standards. It may take some time, but yes, the nation is on that point. Therefore, what the Honorable RM said as a reforms, and this is from my experience, that last couple of years, this government in particular has been doing a lot as far as the reforms are concerned. That's why we see new changes and new approach which is coming in it. But you cannot be just inducting anything what is available or what somebody claims I'll be able to produce unless and until it meets that criteria.
Got it. So, sir, I'm sure that the quality assurance is a major role in defense acquisition procedure right now. As the DG who retired recently, what is the role of DG quality assurance in defense procurement at the moment, sir?
So let me put it across in a very different way. Last couple of years, n number of studies happened on reforms, restructuring of the QA elements. There has to be a reason behind it. Why was it so thought of a thing that every time you have a committee on reforms in QA? So every time the delays were attributed to QA. कि साहब बहुत टाइम लगता है टेस्टिंग करने में. Let me bring it out in a very simpler way. Testing is a procedure which is defined, whether it will be done in 10 parameters or 20 parameters. They all are supposed to be meeting the RFP requirements. Now the delay is, it fails in a particular test. And the question which is given to the other side is, sir, it is still under testing. The blame is on the QA agency for delay, and the blame is not for the faults which have occurred or the failures which are there in design. Having said that, in last 2 years, as part of the study which was done by the quality by the one of the agencies which was forgetting the name under Ministry of Commerce, who did this study, suggested certain changes. So when this report was submitted, we discussed it in detail, and the reforms or restructuring of QA was put in place. I should be thankful to the RM and the then Defence Secretary who put this whole structure in place. So today, we have made a separate entity for testing. A complete directorate has been set up, and a complete directorate has been set up for induction of equipment. That is the two places where people were saying that the delays are there. So we have integrated all the labs within the QA agencies, not only in DGQA, but all other agencies who have the lab of the DRDO, of the DPSUs, into one common entity and giving a defense testing portal, so that industry is able to identify what is their product, what is the type of test they require, and where is the availability within the country. So this is already now working and in place, which the industry should make use of. Second most important element was that now I have a supply order with me, so there should be no delays as far as the production is concerned. So we have a monitoring system which is called as a supply order monitoring portal, in which the complete movement of that store is visible digitally. The delay is on whose part, and it can be monitored at all levels. So these reforms are an ongoing process. Therefore, you also need to invest in the testing infrastructure which is available with the QA agencies. We were going in for setting up of product testing labs, because today the biggest problem is capturing the user's requirement and testing not only the software but the hardware. Both are equally important. So we have to be given these sanctions, and we have to be empowered to set up these labs so that we are at par internationally and get these things testing within the country. Even for my RT equipment, or I require a range which has to be much bigger than my existing ranges. Therefore, a place has to be identified within the country. And that's what the government has to identify and give it, whether it is given to DRDO, or it is given to the TPSUs, or it is given to the QA agencies, or it is integrated.
So at the moment, where are the quality checks? Where does it happen in India, sir?
The respective organizations, that is the Army, Navy and Air Force, had got their own QA setup which is involved. So like Army has got DGQA, the Air has got DGQA, and the Naval QA element is also part of DGQA.
Okay.
So at each stage, we come in as part of second party quality checks.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that quality is now with the supplier. It only has to come to us with the critical certifications. Yes, it is meeting. You can measure it online.
There's no cross check.
There is a cross check which is available. So for that, we have introduced what was referred to as industry standard 4.0. Put it all online. I need not go to your establishment. Let it be visible to me in my own office. But show me that flow, how the production is moving. It is digitally controlled. Infuse AI in your manufacturing. We have already given this and implemented in 4-5 industries. This is the focus which was in the PM's 100 days program. And this should also be part of the reforms, that how industry is transforming in implementation of industry standard 4.0. Where does the QA come in? QA comes in auditing of that. QA comes in certification of that. And QA comes in giving the responsibility to the manufacturer that you are responsible for what you have manufactured. So it is now the onus lies on you to certify that your product is moving in the correct direction, given as per the RFP, matching the standard to which it was supplied to have its compliance, and then the production moves.
Who does these certifications?
These certifications should be done by the QA agencies. Currently also it is being done by the QA agencies. They have the availability of manpower, they have the availability of the labs. Also, they have the expertise in these subjects to do it, whether it is ammunition.
And there's liability also.
There is liability and there is accountability. You are a stakeholder in this whole process. So this is sometime a thought process comes, and we have matured to that level. We don't require QA.
Do they match the international standards?
So that is what the manufacturers have to come up and explain. Are they at level? So my question is, if I am acquiring a technology which is of some other country, how can I be sure in claiming that it meets all my standards, unless and until I am assured by that country that I have developed it as per these standards. And each country will have its standards or the requirements meeting their needs.
Right.
Not
we
my
we
needs.
need our standardized.
So you need to adopt it to my requirement. That's what I said. It's a very unique country in which you have got all type of temperatures and all type of terrains. So you have to be sure in what you are buying to meet your requirement. You just can't be accepting anything which comes from anywhere and it becomes part of my technology unless and until it is a clear or a critical technology.
Got it. There are a lot of problems in the defense ecosystem right now. I don't know if we should even call it an ecosystem. To start in talking about other problems now, moving from DAP, can we label some stakeholders, the main stakeholders? One could be the user, then it could be the bureaucracy, the decision maker, then research and development such as DRDO, and then there are manufacturers, both private and PSUs. Am I missing out on anyone, sir?
These are primarily who are the stakeholders, but let me touch upon the R&D part. What is the current defense or the nation spending on the R&D? If you go to the recent reports, which is there in the media, we are just spending about 0.64% of our GDP on R&D. China is about 2.4. America is at about 3.7. And a country like Israel is at about 5.7. That means nearly about 6%. So if I am not investing into R&D, how do I get or develop technology?
There was a reform, in fact, last year that said we need to increase our R&D budget to at least 25% to be able to reach where we want to reach in self-reliance.
So the budget is likely to come. So let us hope and pray that a good amount of it goes for R&D.
Also, earlier there was some 1 lakh crore of deep technology was promised as well for private players and PSUs as well. But there hasn't been any operationalization of these reforms that we spoke about in the past as well.
A lot of positive indigenization lists have been issued by the government, which therefore says that these type of technologies which were being imported have to be made within the country. Now, if they have to be made within the country, and if I don't have this technology, therefore I first need to go into the R&D of that.
Obviously.
Or I need to have a collaborator where a technology is matured and available across the world.
Or there's a transfer of technology.
Or there's a transfer of technology. Now, this transfer of technology goes where? It either goes to the public
PSUs.
sectors or it goes to the private sector.
Does it go to the private sector?
It should go. Today, both are equal players as far as acquisition concerned. That much of reforms has already been done in DAP. The government does not give undue favor to DPSUs. The public sector, the private sector is also an equal player.
You think so?
I don't have to think. It is for the private sector for whom the money is available. They have to come and become a stakeholder in it. And the question now is, I first give him the money. Within the money allotted to him, he will buy something and then he will develop. The private sector has to come and claim, sir, this is a clear product which I have made. Even if you don't want it, I don't clear for your supply. These are the type of countries I am exporting to. Barring maybe one odd company, I don't see any company making a good product and exporting. It may be subsystem, it could be components. But as a major project or a major equipment or a major platform being exported to some other country, and which we are not buying, or we are not encouraging that private sector to come in. So unfortunate part is, because of that limitation or resources, the focus on R&D
goes down.
has to be important. So for this, the restructuring of DRDO was also going on. And since the study has already been done, so it should be taken to its logical conclusion.
Got it. Sir, there are some case studies that India should learn from as well, such as the US and China, who does a lot in research and development. What are they doing right in order to be where they are in terms of deep technology and critical technology, where most of these 60 critical technologies are either run by the US or China? What can we learn from them in terms of defense manufacturing and defense production of research and development, and enhance our R&D in this sector? What are they doing right, basically?
You just leave defense for a moment. Whatever technologies the world is today acquiring, whether it is AI based or robotic based or any other based, we as a nation are seeing those technologies and trying to adopt it and bridge that gap. Which are those technologies which are not available with the world, but we as a nation are a pioneers in that technology and thinking in that line?
None.
So if it is none, then the question is, why is it none?
That's what I'm asking you.
So
What are the...
So the reason is, where is my talent going? Other than DRDO, within defense, do I have a consortium of industry or defense industry which is pooling in, putting in its resources through their industry bodies and have a combined R&D center in India in which the talent or the young talent can come up and start thinking on the current problems,
And
the world
futuristic
technologies.
technology.
The China has already started moving in the aircraft which is 6th generation. And that is what the air chief says, that there is a lot of delay. That delay primarily is in the engines. We have been designing, redesigning or thinking of stabilizing the Kaveri engine. But if you ask the the youngsters who go and join there in the R&D, all the knowledge they say rest with the superior. So that hierarchy in R&D and a rigid structure has to be simplified, and that status and that liberty has to be given to that young mind who can develop these technologies. And believe me, these people are available within the country, and if you don't employ them, there will be a talent hunt by other countries and they will reach there. So every odd day you read on paper that so and so company in America hired somebody with India with this much of a package. Why is this boy going over there, and why he is not able to bridge this gap of R&D technology?
So I feel it's not about the talent, which is a bigger problem. I think it's more about the financial backing to these private players who can do their research and development, but there's no backing, similar backing that comes from the US to their private players in defense manufacturing. Do you agree with that?
I will not talk broadly about all the defense manufacturers, but there are few corporates which are leading corporates in this country who have also been defense suppliers. Please ask this question to them: how much have they invested into R&D?
But why would they invest if there's no return? So they are a business itself. So how can a business risk without a confirmed order from the government or the PSU, DPSUs?
If you develop a good technology which is contemporary and it is available in the other parts of the world, why we as a nation will not buy the technology? I'll put it across in a simple way and in a very lowest form of technology. Most of the vehicles which move on the Indian roads do not have a comfort as far as a driver is concerned when it comes to commercial vehicles. When it comes to a car, you have all the comfort. When it comes to a truck or a commercial vehicle, the comfort level goes down. Why can't you compare it with the European standards and develop it? Who has stopped you? We do not have an independent suspension vehicle. Develop it. We are dependent upon Tatra, which we have indigenized to a larger extent. Why are the other players not coming in? And you mean to say the leading automotive manufacturer in this country do not have that much of resources to spend on R&D to develop this technology? Why the private sector is not coming in collaboration, of course, with the government, and government will definitely fund it for developing aero engines, for developing engines for tanks, BMPs, and tracked vehicles, because these are high-powered engines which are needed. Why we don't have these technologies? These are not technologies which are not available. These are technologies which have to be harnessed and brought within the country. So if you have this, why you don't have a market? If Rafale is inducted and likely to be inducted more, it is very simple in front of you. This much of money is going out of the country.
It is, sir. For instance, only today you were showcasing me a news that said that 1.5 lakh crore is set aside for a budget for fighters, submarines and helicopters and artillery guns, which we are importing at the moment, sir. So that shows a lot about our gap between our indigenization.
This lies within your question, the media report, and what I said is that something is missing for which the money is available, the country is paying, the country is more than willing to give it to your Indian partners, but kindly develop it. And the market is available.
Market is there.
So it is there. These are certain issues or certain things which we have to tackle in a fast track. You know, last year we developed an engine of 1500 horsepower by BAML. It still has to go a critical phase of testing for which the testing facility itself is not available. Firstly, when I developed this engine, I should see what is my current vehicle capabilities within this country. The engine or the block should be such that it should fit into all my existing vehicles and the futuristic light tank which I am thinking. So if you do not have a power pack developed within the country, whatever you may do or build as an equipment, your dependency will be again on somebody who can always deny you technology at the right moment. So this, as a nation, we have to think very fast. If we have to bridge the gap between what you said, that China is moving forward, because China today sees the whole globe as its competitor, but
And as the market as well.
of course as a market, but if I see it, he is just sitting across me. I have no option but to match and develop those technologies in a much faster pace.
True. They are the biggest adversaries that India has right now.
Adversaries or not an adversaries, because he is very much there and you have to counter. So these things have to be integrated, have to be thought of. If I am giving this much of money, so money is there. You have to come forward and tell, कि sir, why are you giving this money to France? Give this money to me and I will develop it.
Absolutely.
तो ये पैसा तो है देश में, अब ले क्यों नहीं रहे हो?
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल.
Because you are scared of not investing or taking that risk. So that risk has to be taken by the private sector also,
True.
other than DPSUs.
True, true. So as of today, we invest about 1.28 lakh crores in defense production. According to the RM, he speculates the target for 2029 to be 3 lakh crores in defense production. How can we scale that margin, that is the gap that there is in terms of defense production right now?
There are two things in it. One is conventional production. That is, this is the requirement of the defense forces for which we have the capability and we are making it. We are upscaling it because the requirement is there. Now in this, the gap is about the critical technologies or the equipment. You're all talking about drones. You also need an anti-drone system.
True.
You can't be dependent upon some other country to give you an anti-drone system, because drone is today a reality. It has been used in most of the wars which are happening across the world, whether they are the main countries which are using it, and even the non-state players like Hamas, the Houthis, or the Hezbollah has used them.
Yeah. There's all kind of drones available these days.
So if you have to upscale it, so you have to think about harnessing these technologies, and these technologies can be brought in by public and private sector both. And in this, private sector is also taking a big lead. Now the question is, where is this private sector? How do I bring it and how do I integrate? So in these reforms, when you said this is the year of reforms, we have also to learn with the strength which our different services have. Like Navy has got a full-fledged professional directorate. And we have got a very small component for a much larger army which is called as the Army Design Bureau. So Army Design Bureau has to learn from the professional directorates of Navy and see how best they are integrated with the shipyards. So today all my leading shipyards has got a very heavy component of Navy working with them, both on deputation as a naval component and both as part of the naval shipyards production divisions. That means they understand what is the requirement of the Navy. They understand the R&D procedure, what Navy has developed, because it is their R&D and they are developing. So today if you see the business wise, they are the leading producers, or the biggest component of that 3 lakh crore what you are claiming will go to the shipbuilding. Of course, ships are important and they are coming in big numbers. But
Aircraft
this
carriers.
type of thing has to be adopted by Army, that we have to integrate with the defense PSUs and bring this knowledge and requirement of what I need integrated with the PSUs, both as being as part of the PSU and being as an advisor to the PSU, ki this is what I require, and get integrated. In US, Lockheed Martin or the Boeing or the North Corporation, they develop a product, they supply a product, they sustain a product.
Yeah.
And they have all the elements within them. Yahan pe we work in our own silos and compartments. So unless these silos and compartments are broken and the service people are inducted into all the elements, it may not work the way it will work.
Absolutely.
And if it is being integrated, then it will work in a much, maybe it will work in a much better way. And the example is in front of you. how the shipyards are working. If they can work, the other
So
PSUs can be work. And this is what the air chief says, that I see a delay in induction of the
Tejas.
Tejas. It was a recent statement which made headlines.
India needs about 42
So
squadrons.
therefore, the air people should be part of the HEL team, not only for testing of aircraft, but in developing of aircraft. They should also be part of the complete integrated testing procedure, and that accountability has to come in. Why these delays are there? Where is this money going? We have to reduce that culture of forming committees or apex bodies into those responsible within a given time frame for supply of equipment.
Got
So
it.
this is another major big reform which needs to happen.
From here, I'm going to jump to another important reform that requires, that RM Rajnath Singh also mentioned, is the export part. Sir, as of 2024, we were exporting about 21,000 crore in defense exports, in defense product exports. Our aim is to make it by 2029 to 50,000 crore. But before our podcast that started, you mentioned about what kind of things we export, and if these are critical enough for export and to accumulate in it. Let's hear more on it from you, sir.
See, we are already at 21,000 crores and we will definitely reach that 50,000 crore. But the question now is, what am I exporting? I have to be an exporter of platforms. How many ships India has exported? How many aircrafts India has exported? How many RT guns India has exported? How many missiles we have exported? Not being there as a supplier of subsystems or components, because it may be a requirement of an OEM of that country who is placing independently an order on some supplier to meet his requirements. So that should not constitute as a defense export. That becomes part of a nation's export. But if you are actually wanting to say my defense export, then each company wise we should see how much the PSUs have been told to export and how much these PSUs have been able to export. In ammunition, some of the DPSUs have done quite well, but it has to be seen in a larger context. Are we in a position today to sell major defense products? In the recent procurement, the DRDO product, that is the attacks gun, is likely to go to the two leading private manufacturers. Now, if the design is same, firstly between the two suppliers, there should be commonality of parts or commonality in design. The first thing which I should do in that is reduce what each player is putting as an imported component and take the help of the associated industry in developing it, because the design is Indian, the companies are Indian. Then the both should be given that permission to become an exporter in that product. You know,
Right.
India has got a huge potential in ammunition. India has got a huge potential in missile export. India has got a huge potential in export of small arms and RT systems. This is where we should develop. And why restrict to 50,000 crore? We should go much beyond that. That there should be an offset in what I am buying for the need of the country. I am able to export that much so that my budget offsetting takes place, and I could put a bigger part of it for R&D development.
Got it.
That is why China is progressing. That's why America is progressing. That is why Israel is a leading nation. The pager theory or the walkie-talkie just did not come over a period of one day.
No, it took
This
15
must have
years.
been a thought process which would have gone about a couple of years back into that R&D, into
15
that
years,
research,
sir.
into developing that product. So ad hocism to an extent will not work.
True.
You have to put all these things in place in a very structured way. This year of reform has to be actually be a year of lot of thought-provoking discussions, seminars. Outcome of that should become actionable.
Yeah.
Like last year we had the Chintan Shivar on indigenization. Every point there was taken to its logical conclusion. So it should happen. Then only this will transform the whole system.
Got it. So 2-3 quick points I want to cover with you, sir. One is that we very proudly talk about how many license we have given our defense manufacturers in the recent years, about 369 to be precise. Do you think it is enough for a country this big of 1.5 billion people, and we are giving 300 odd licenses for defense manufacturing?
As far as the licenses are concerned, I think the country today is much liberal, or the Department of Export or Commerce is liberal in giving licensing. But it is an industry which has to come forward. And these 359 or 60 you took in, how many are actually, after taking the license, have come into defense manufacturing? If you go into that ecosystem of defense manufacturing, rather than small players who are there into logistics of various subsystems, the big critical players are not much. This 340 may be a very small number. What you're saying is a country so big and so diverse and with the industry base. So there is no stopping to the industry. But let industry come, claim and give a product which they feel will meet the nation's requirement as far as the defense is concerned. आज की डेट में टेक्नोलॉजी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड नहीं है. The other people who have got, they are very willing to collaborate with you. But come with some product, and all these RFPs are being uploaded. It is being openly said that this is a requirement. This is nothing which is secretive, or we don't want to tell the world we are requiring it or we are buying it.
Got it.
These global RFPs are there. So come, you may not be able to give a big platform.
True.
Even if you contribute to a major subsystem, that is also equally important.
But sir, we need to empower the MSMEs because they are the small players who can go on to be leaders as well. How can we empower these MSMEs, these small startups, and make them national champions?
This is critical and important. Last year we had a seminar for the MSMEs. Now, where does this MSME fit in? Maybe a tier 2 or a tier 3 industry. Whom is he supplying to? One who is the main manufacturer or who gets the order for the platform. The dependency of his will be who comes in his ecosystem. If he's getting anything imported, the private player or the leading manufacturer, the consortium of MSMEs have to come together and decide based on the volume of the purchases which this country makes that this much of percentage of the business has to come to these SMEs, and the bigger player also has to have their own ecosystems wherein they have a chunk of MSMEs working for them as their dedicated suppliers. If Toyota has its dedicated group of industries which are their suppliers, the Maruti has it, same way all the defense manufacturers should have it, and see what can come from within the industry. That is what I said. The Toyota Hyryder and the Maruti Grand Vitara, absolutely same in nature. That means both can have a similar ecosystem. So that's what I'm saying in attacks.
Got it.
Both the suppliers have to develop that MSME base in which their components can be complementary to each other. The branding could be different. That means I have got two sources of manufacturing, they said. Both can collaborate with their MSMEs in a different way, and they develop the ecosystem which becomes the ecosystem for the complete defense supplies.
Got it. So yes, that's right. We need to empower the MSMEs. Only then we can, create more national champions in deep technology, especially. So last two questions. One is more about one of the reforms, which is the most important reforms needed. It is the reform of integration and theaterization. We won't get into deep of this subject, but I want to understand from you, is there any clarity on this subject when it comes to the defense ecosystem? Do people know what we need and where we are and what is required in order to achieve deterrence?
So as far as theaterization and defense integration is concerned, I think the most suitable person for that could be the CDS or the team from CDS. I will not go into the major part of it. But what I understand out of it is that today acquisition for this country is in two forms. One is the capital, which DG acquisition, government and the service headquarters are doing. And second, which you said that 3 lakh crores,
Defense
a
production.
large part of it goes for the revenue part. And today the revenue budget is with the CDS of all the 3 services. There is a need for us within the services to think what the other service is doing. Navy has got chief of material, Air Force has got air officer maintenance, and what we call in Army has got MGS, Master General of Sustenance. Now, if you see Air Force and Navy, it is absolutely the professional bodies which are dealing with it. But when you come to Army, firstly, MGS is not only dealing with sustenance, but he's also dealing with ammunition, he's also dealing with clothing. So we need to have a major reform here that all three should be integrated in a similar fashion. If we are looking for theaterization in a platform, I'm not going into the operational part of it because that's not my subject. But this is important what the other two services are doing.
The finances has to be streamlined.
So not only the finances, the procedure has to be streamlined. Therefore, sustenance for the army, that is maintenance of the equipment which comes through the revenue budget, and a very large amount goes into maintenance of the equipment, should be similar in procedure what is there for Navy and for Air Force. So you can't have a person who is not qualified professionally but dealing with this subject. Second is when you say ordnance, so we may resort back or come back to that Master General of Ordnance who deals with only ammunition and clothing. Or ammunition and clothing can become part of operational logistics. So these 2-3 things which are merged and only different for the army, that from the Navy and the Air Force, if you have to have good integration and theaterization, this will become not only become important, but this will also be questioned.
Yeah.
That why this subject is not being touched upon and why the responsibility is not given to those maintenance agencies which are involved in it for actually being responsible for procurement, sustenance and maintenance.
Understood.
As is being done by the Navy, as is being done by the Air Force. So you can't keep army separate and have a theatre command.
True.
So this is a food for thought which people should think as part of reforms and give that responsibility to those agencies which are actually into it and should be made responsible for it. So you don't have to do new research. You
Understood.
only have to see what your sister organizations are doing
True.
and adopt it and then take it forward.
Understood.
Because then you will have a dichotomy in procedures. Similarly, for Army, Navy and Air Force, where there is a commonality of equipment, we did a very large exercise in saying to it that all of them should have this similar part numbers. Because when integration takes place, the equipment integration will also be there.
Yeah.
Because the communication systems will become same. The application of radars may become same. The application of the RT system will only thing the platforms will vary. Their design may vary because you will be using it as a part of the air asset or you may be using as part of the ship, and this will become the ground equipment. But many things will become common.
True.
Your ground systems will become common. So this subject is very important, but in this subject, this integration is also very important, that army starts using
Dual use, basically.
the same role what chief of material is doing there and giving the same type of responsibility to those professionals how they have been doing in air and in navy, and use it for the army as well and
Got
not
it.
keep it separate.
Got it. So last question for today that I've been asking a lot of my guests from defense ecosystem is to understand their perspective on the fact that we spend under 2% of the GDP as a defense budget. So is that enough for us in today's time, or do we need to amp it up?
I think I'm repeating this again. My spending on defense as per the media report is about 0.64%. 2% is what China is spending.
No, 2% is India spending as a whole.
As a whole. So of that it is about 0.64%. So I need to move at least and jump to 2% of my GDP in R&D spending.
In R&D spending only.
In R&D spending. If I do it in R&D spending, then I create about n number of startups, or what you said, give more licenses, or harness the talent which is available within the country, come out with those industries which we think are the technologies of tomorrow, whether it is in robotics, whether it is quantum computing, whether it is the drone technology or an anti-drone technology, or to that matter, the space technology.
Got it.
And the missile technology is changing every day. You had 2 wars which are still going on. See the type of equipment, the technology which they are using. And the border is not a limitation today. The Iran fired from where it wanted to fire. The Israel went from where it wanted to went.
Exactly.
So your neighbor is not sitting just across the border. Your neighbor could be an invisible neighbor. And you as a nation of 1.4 billion, as you rightly said, has to start thinking on this.
Correct.
How we can bring in this talent and technology. So पहले reforms के बाद में finance, and finance के बाद में will to do it.
True.
And last comes the accountability. ठीक है? Because we have so many stakeholders. Believe me, nothing can go wrong.
True.
As I said, trust 2 people. the defense secretary of this country and the respective vice chiefs.
True.
Give them that authority which they have.
Absolutely.
So they are accountable for it and they will produce results.
We need to understand how important defense is for the country in order to have deterrence. And that's more of a mindset change, and it will change with dialogue, and that's what we're doing, sir. This has been a very enriching and enlightening conversation for me, sir. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Had a lot of insights. I'm sure the audience had a lot to take away as well.
Thank you so much. And if the voice is heard, and maybe part of it goes as part of the reforms, it will be a contribution which we are able to do.
Definitely, sir.
Everything may not be correct what I said, but even if it is taken partly or it becomes, so it is some amount of contribution which you can do to help that reform process become a successful process.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
We at DOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better. Our production quality is going to get even better. And hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.